Welcome to Womb Talk. I'm your host, Elizabeth Vanderwelt, the owner and founder of Fruitful Womb Doula Services. In Womb Talk, we like to go over different topics that are acceptable for all audiences. We're not medical professionals. Well, this one might be. Everything on this podcast is to educate you so that you can make better choices for your body. If you have a passion for all things women's health, then let's start listening. So today we have the incredible gut health specialist, hopefully I said that correctly, Lisa, joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us more about what you do?
Yes, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for having me. I'm very excited to be on the show today. I'm not a medical doctor, but I'm a functional diagnostic practitioner and nutritionist. I have specialized in running functional lab tests to look into underlying imbalances and stressors regarding gut health, but also hormones and fertility. So I'm so excited to be here today and to dive into this topic with you.
Yes, well, that sounded very medical professional like. So I was like, I just want to make sure that I not knock down what you do.
Thank you.
So I've always been taught that gut health is also called like the second brain. I would say a lot, maybe probably more women than I realize, that it doesn't, like, they don't know that it impacts their hormones, the mood, fertility. So can you maybe explain the connection between gut health and our overall hormone balance?
Yes, I would love to. And I'll try to keep it short, but I also want to circle back a bit because it is a very complex topic and it
Yeah.
has many layers. I want to start off actually with a quote, which I believe most of us know, which is all disease starts in the gut. And I want to be brave and say that I disagree. The gut is a place where we see imbalances show up pretty fast. And that's probably the first place where they show up, but oftentimes it's not the root of the issues. And when we talk about hormonal health, we have to keep in mind that the root of these imbalances starts way upstream. And I'm going to come back to this later on, but our gut health, like you say, is extremely important, not only for the hormones, but also for our immune system, for how resilient we are fighting off the external world. It matters because it influences the quality of our thoughts. People with anxiety oftentimes have very imbalanced gut microbial strains. We see a lot of connection between the gut and the brain. And like I said, not only hormones are infected, but more so our overall health, our metabolism, how energized we are, how well we can sleep, how well we detoxify. So there's a whole layer to this. And if we want to go deeper into the hormonal health, we have to keep in mind that, and this is something I teach my one-on-one clients, is that hormones are not necessary for survival, right? And that is why they are affected pretty easily, because the body under stress always prioritizes you surviving. And whenever we are stressed chronically, our hormones start to suffer. That is the first point. And the second point is our gut is so dominant, as in taking energy from us, as our body giving and nourishing our guts in order to digest, in order to get that energy, in order to have a proper immune system, that whenever there is something going on in the gut, we see that in the hormones as well. So it is all connected, and it's really hard to take these things apart. But when we try to look at it separately, we need to know that they all very much depend on each other.
Oh, wow. There's so much to it, eh? That's what I'm always like, everything is so connected, and it kind of sometimes can stress you out because you're like, I gotta help so many different systems in your body going, right? Like, how do I make sure it's
Yes.
all perfect?
Yeah.
That's
It is really complex. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, and I mean, you're speaking on one topic, and then I've spoken to other people that talk about like other things, right? That go for women's health, and like the layers that we have, it's like, I'm always like, oh, there's so much to us that we got to take care of.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah,
So
I agree.
a lot of people, I don't struggle too much with bloating. My sister does. I struggle a lot with the irregular digestion, sometimes food sensitivities, but
Mhm.
I don't know where to start when it comes to healing that. And I know you talked maybe a little bit on this already, but I'm sure a lot
Mhm.
of other women don't know as well. So what would you say are the most overlooked root causes of gut issues? And how can women kind of begin to address them by themselves or maybe with support?
Yeah, great question. So there are a few. I'll go ahead and start with this one, diet. Diet is also a very complex and broad topic. And the biggest mistakes that I see women do is either eating not enough, cutting back on calories, having a really restricted diet, or they eat too much. And both extremes are not optimal, obviously, and we need to come back to what does the body really require in order to create proper hormones, in order to have a healthy metabolism, and therefore also gut health. So these are the two extremes that I see. And what that includes is that some people eat too many carbs, too much sugar, too much processed food. That is the one extreme. And the opposite would be not having enough protein, not eating enough fiber, and not eating in a way that actually allows your body to absorb your nutrients. So there are, again, several layers attached to this. But diet can be customized in a way that the individual has a better absorption and therefore a better hormone production. That's the first thing. There are other reasons, for example, low stomach acid, which we see very often. And that pretty often shows up in my vegan clients, because with a vegan diet, you do not need as much stomach acid to actually digest and assimilate your food. So the body starts to slow down the production of that. Another reason why stomach acid could be low is that you have high stress levels, because high cortisol also downregulates stomach acid. What low stomach acid does is it creates something like a likelihood of bloating or indigestion or poor nutrient assimilation. So, like I said, what we see in the gut and the hormones is downstream. We always have to look back to where did all of this start and what triggered this dysregulation in the natural processes of the body, right? And then there are more reasons, like blood sugar imbalances. People don't eat proper meals. They have sugary meals instead of combining that with enough fiber or protein, or they drink coffee on an empty stomach and they wonder why the blood sugar spikes and they are completely tired after that or crashing. And there are many things that we can look at regarding diet and our lifestyle that will impact how the gut is regulated or not. And yeah, I could continue with this forever.
Well, no, I find it very interesting because I would, just speaking for my own personal health a little bit, is I would kind of wonder if I do have the low stomach acid, because I do have like the certain things that you were mentioning. I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of me, that's kind of me. But I'm not vegan, so it was the other stuff
Yeah.
inside of my brain. Put on the spot, gone.
Well, there are more reasons to it. There could also be acute infections like H. pylori that slows down stomach acid production
Wow.
as well. And those are things that we can measure with the lab testing, for example. It's interesting because we listen to the symptoms of the body, but then there's also this scientific evidence in the lab results that shows us what is going on underneath that and what is actually happening. So it's really good to be intuitive, and then it's also good to have some evidence with that.
Yeah, I'm all for like blood tests. I had done like a hair and saliva test one time,
Oh,
and in
nice.
there I had actually found that like I had a parasite, but I had just gone on antibiotics for like a weird strep throat abscess thing I had. So I was like, "Oh, that's probably gone." But my eating had completely changed after that. Like my best friend had been telling me for like a year straight, like, "Oh, you probably have a parasite." Because all I craved was sugar. I picked on everything. Like, "Oh, I don't like this. I don't like this." Now I'm obsessed with fruit. My mom, every time she sees me eat now, she's like, "Who are you? You're not my daughter." So, it's completely changed, but she always says it. She's like, "You used to hate meat and cheese on a sandwich. What are you doing wanting that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Now it doesn't taste good." So it's funny. It's funny how much different layers there are to the body, right? So
You're right. Yeah.
what can be out
And
there to
it's Yeah, and it's not only parasites that can make you do that, it's also imbalances in the gut microbial strain. So sometimes we have an overgrowth of bacteria, and as weird as it sounds, this bacteria is so smart. It knows exactly what it needs to survive and to thrive and to grow. So it does communicate through the gut-brain axis with you what you're supposed to eat. So when we have an overgrowth of the bad bacteria, opportunistic bacteria, we see that this can, I don't want to say overcome our thoughts and our behavior, but it does influence us. And this is somehow so scary to me and so fascinating at the same time. Yeah.
It's like those people that see the like the pictures of the little bacteria on your head, and then they're like, "Ooh, there's bugs on our head," and that grosses people out. But I'm like, learn till you figure some other things out about yourself, and then maybe you won't be so grossed out.
Oh, yeah. And have fun while doing that.
Yeah. So we hear a lot about probiotics and fermented foods. My sister lately has been obsessed with these like ginger bug drinks, and I love them. I think it's so much better than soda. So I really just am curious, like, are there any other common gut healing myths that maybe women should be cautious of when trying to improve their digestion, or things maybe we should be doing?
Yes. So I always say whenever someone is feeling great and they don't have any symptoms, no bloating, no indigestion, no stomach cramps, no diarrhea, no constipation, and everything is just flowing, they feel great also on a hormonal level, I like to recommend paleo diets because they are the general approach, from my opinion, to optimal gut health. So healthy fats, animal-based protein, and that can be customized as well. But very generally speaking, I have nothing against fermented foods. I have nothing against taking probiotics in general. But as soon as there is a health issue coming up, I like to look deeper because probiotics can actually nourish or increase the overgrowth of bacteria that is already there if we don't know that that is a thing, correct? So if we don't do the testing, we don't know what is currently overgrowing. And if we're just feeding probiotics on top, it's like, well, and you suddenly are more bloated than before, I would not wonder why. So that can be a thing for some people, and it's just good to keep that in mind. That's why we see it not working for everyone. The other thing is, as soon as there is some intolerance, we also see resistance towards histamine being a topic for some people, and many foods like fermented foods are very high in histamine. And that can be something that we can test and see if that is an issue for you. But like I said, if someone has no complaints, perfect. But if someone has complaints, I'd like to do a food sensitivity test just to see where is the body currently having issues digesting this food, and where is this creating more inflammation, more autoimmune or immune response, I should say, and where is this increasing the level of symptoms that the person is having. So I used to think diet is one diet for all, but it's just not that anymore, especially when we have chronic symptoms. There is something else we need to look at, and we have to dig deeper than that. So generally speaking, it works for many people, but not for everyone.
Yeah. Well, I guess I never thought that you could like get an overdose almost of probiotics before. Like my sister has taken it religiously for many years, so she was like, "Oh, maybe you need to start getting on it." And then I got kind of like an over pill taking too much. I was like, "I'm done with vitamins for a while. I need just a break. I'm so taking this one and this one helps with that one." And I was trying so many that I'm kind of like, "No, I'm done. I need a break." So, I never thought that you could actually maybe get too much of it before. But that's I guess kind of everything has a bit of don't take it and overdo. Everything can have an overdue.
Exactly. It's always about the balance.
That's very interesting. And that's why these tests that you're talking about like really are important, because when you're like kind of guessing in the dark, that's like trying to find something that you're like, I just knew it was in this spot and I know this would help, but like I can't see what am I doing. like that's
Yeah,
where those kind of things really come in handy a bit. So a lot of new
absolutely.
information for people to start using and like get in contact with you. So stress and gut health seem to have a direct link. I think you mentioned this already a little bit. Um, and stress is unavoidable for a lot of women, especially like with the balancing of careers, motherhood, and then trying to take care of yourself. Self-care. I'm a very big person of like, let's try to do self-care, and then I'm like, and you don't listen to your own advice. Okay, great. Because I'm like, oh, you should be doing that, and then I don't, and I'm like, eh. So what are some practical, maybe daily strategies that we could do to kind of like support that gut health, even during like a stressful time, like, that I was mentioning, like with my own loss that I've had, or, anything for that matter?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is such a fundamental topic in this whole conversation, because, like I said earlier, not all disease starts in the gut. From my perspective, it starts with stress. And like you said, it's unavoidable. We all have it, and you cannot get around it. Some
No.
have it more than others, but we need to find ways to deal with it and to approach it in a sustainable and loving way. Otherwise, we burn out. So, a lot of this has to do with nervous system regulation. And I think it's really important to understand that your body is always dysregulated as soon as you perceive stress. And I think this is a really valuable takeaway for everyone listening. Perceived stress is not always real stress. It can be that you have a deadline in your job, or it could be you thinking your neighbor is stalking you and that is stressing you out every single day, right? So there are these two ways, and I think this will make many people instantly start to think, where is the perceived stress real and where are we making that up? But what we have to know is that either of these will have the same chemical and physiological effect on our body. And that is to put us into absolute survival state. And your body will do everything, like I mentioned before, to get you into survival. It pushes the blood flow no longer into your digestive tract. It will no longer support bowel movements. It will no longer prioritize hormone production, but it will send the blood down into your limbs so that you can run and escape. And if people are in this state chronically, every single day, too often, that is when we see the severe and chronic health complaints show up. And I'm saying all of this to bring this awareness to how can you regulate yourself, because that is, in my opinion, the most approachable way to see this topic is how can you throughout a day come back to this awareness of I am dysregulated, and that's what's going on. It's not that my life is falling apart. Maybe I'm just dysregulated. And the easiest way, because I'm also a yoga instructor, is to actually work with your breath, to stop moving, to stop doing anything as hard as it can be, and to come back to your breath. Take 3 deep breaths in and out, and you will notice that your nervous system is instantly responding. This is a very simple technique, obviously, something I also recommend before having a meal, because when you're dysregulated in survival, your digestive enzymes are not being produced. Your stomach acid is lowered, as I said before. So your body's not even able to absorb the beautiful, maybe organic food meal that you have in front of you. So it's really about these small actions throughout a day of coming back to regulation. So breath is really powerful. Obviously, exercising. For women, I like to say don't overdo it. I'm not a fan of doing HIIT workouts every day, but come back to weightlifting, maybe some yoga, maybe some Pilates. Find ways that are not too intense, but that still softly challenge your body. And really purposefully create time in your schedule to do less. And I think that is the hardest part for most of us, because we are so active and we're always doing something, right? And there are many more things that we can do, obviously, to regulate ourselves, but breath always is my number one recommendation throughout the day. It can be something like journaling in the morning or journaling after a really stressful day to gather your thoughts and to calm your system back down, and other things, taking a bath. There's so much out there, but always having this awareness that maybe the world is not falling apart, but maybe it's your nervous system that is trying to communicate, hey, I am afraid. Something is giving me the perception that we are in danger. Are we really in danger? Or can we do something to feel more safe? And that is also what will affect your gut health, what will affect your hormones in the long run, and what will affect fertility in the long run. So it's all connected.
Yeah, like I'm a bit of an overthinker. Everyone that knows me is like, you overthink every situation, and I get it a lot when I drive. That that stress kind of activation, and I've started trying to like do breath work. That was one of my like New Year's resolutions, and I'm kind of gone off track with it. But ever since I like when I was actively doing it, that had helped a lot, because anytime I was like starting to get that sense of like, oh, maybe like I had hit a moose last year. So I was like, oh, maybe another moose is going to come out. And I start panicking about that. Then I'm like, no, like that was already rare as it is. If it's going to happen like twice in 2 years, it's pretty much just God saying he wants you now. Like, you're ready. So, like, don't stress about it. Like, you're just panicking for no sense. So when I started like trying to incorporate that breath work that you were talking about a little bit there, I was like, yeah, that actually did help me a lot. So that's really, really good advice. That's what I was trying to get at here with this long spiel of mine. But that's
No,
really
good.
good advice.
Okay. I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy it worked for you too, because
Yeah.
yeah, practicing it with your own experience is the best way to reflect on it and to see if it really works or not. Many
Yeah.
people talk about it, but if you don't do it, it's just, you don't know.
Yeah. Well, I always followed this one guy. He did funny sounds, so I thought it was always hilarious to do these breaths where you're like, and you're doing like some funny sound at the same time. I'm like, okay, I can get in with this. I also do preschool, so I'm used to making like funny things to try to get attention for people. So it lives in me. But I'm getting so off topic here for you. So, for women that are dealing with fertility challenges, maybe they're dealing with postpartum recovery, perimenopause, how can they tailor their diet or their lifestyle to best support their gut health during these transitions? And I know it's like a lot. So, if you just want to like pick one and talk about that, I'm totally cool with that. Or if you want to get into all of them, totally do that too. But
Okay, okay.
the floor is yours.
All right. So ideally, I would say even before pregnancy happens, I would always recommend to start preparing for pregnancy. That is my first recommendation. 1 to 2 years, I would start bringing your body into a place where it is ready for conception and for creating life in a healthy body that is resilient, that is in balance, and that feels safe. And that has to do with the external stressors that we talked about, life, everything that is happening, but also the internal stressors of imbalances in the gut, of a liver that might be sluggish, of maybe low sex hormones. So there is this internal, external stressor thing that we want to bring into optimal conditions before even thinking about a pregnancy, because that will not only increase the chance of conceiving, but it will also make the pregnancy smoother. It will give you the chance to have a healthier child, because the health of your child also depends on the health of the parents. So that upfront, I think, is the most important recommendation here. And then running a stool test to see into this, to look into this, or even food sensitivities to optimize the diet would be my number one recommendation. In general, if women are trying to optimize hormones, I always like to go with the following recommendations. Try to have enough protein in every single meal, meaning 30 grams of protein, morning, lunch, and dinner. Cutting out sugars, processed foods, obviously. Alcohol should not even be a thought. A
Yeah.
thought, I hope, for most women in these periods, but that can really negatively affect all of these categories. Managing your blood sugar levels, so having balanced meals, having caffeine after your food, not on an empty stomach in the morning. There are these tiny recommendations that I would give to these women, no matter what phase they are in, because it's always about how can we nourish the body? How can we feed enough cholesterol? How can we have enough bioavailable animal protein to actually create sex hormones and to bring things back into balance? After pregnancy, we see these huge shifts in our cycle and the hormone levels. And in order to bring all of that back into balance, it's about feeding the body appropriately, but also doing a lot of vagus nerve stimulation and regulating the nervous system. And it all comes back to kind of what I said throughout this conversation, giving the body what it needs, cutting out what needs to go, and taking care of the things that are showing up in a negative way.
Oh, wow. And that's so interesting that there's so much, and it applies to like all ages of the reproductive. Like there's so much to it. Like, yeah, you should do this regardless if, you're trying to have a baby or if you're just going to menopause. Like that's very powerful.
Yeah.
There's so much to
Um,
it.
Absolutely. And something that we see pretty often nowadays, which is interesting to me, is that more and more women, the younger they are, and this is independent of pregnancy, have symptoms of menopause in an earlier age. And that is something that we link back to estrogen dominance. And that can show up as a result of a sluggish liver. Our liver has to process so many things nowadays, right? All the toxins, chemicals in the food, in the cosmetics, in the air, in the water, everywhere. We are surrounded by toxic substances. And when the liver is just processing all of this, and then maybe it's lacking nutrients, maybe it is overwhelmed, then we see lower levels of estrogen being metabolized. We also see lower conversion of thyroid hormones, which is why more and more women have thyroid complications nowadays too. And as a result, we have this estrogen piling up, it's recirculated to the liver, and then we see symptoms as menopause showing up. And that can look like strong PMS symptoms for some women. It can look like hot flashes. It can look like weight gain around the hips. It can look like tender breasts. And this is happening more and more for younger women. So way before these topics should be a topic, And that is something that is just worrying me a bit and giving me even more the impression that we need to have these conversations, because if fertility and reproductive health is showing up as a problem, I'm starting to get worried, especially if the women get younger and younger with these
Yeah.
complaints, right? Something is not going well in our society, in our world. And we need to have more conversations, and we need to do some work around this to create the awareness that there is actually a solution to this. And you're not making your symptoms up. Hormonal birth control is not the only option here. I'm not saying it's a horrible thing to take, but it's not the only option. And yeah, that's another topic for another day.
No, I'm in complete agreement with you. I always, when I'm like talking with these things, it's something I'm always like, I never knew this. And I mean, I was homeschooled, so I got a lot of like self study in for a lot of things. But this is not being taught in school. You sit in a health class, or, you know, you have all these extra classes about chemistry. And I'm always like, that's great and all, if you're going to be a chemist. I mean, honestly, let's be real here. Like, this is what affects your day to day living. Like, not knowing about these topics of gut health, like I didn't even know it was getting that serious with the menopause symptoms. But I mean, I have estrogen dominance. Like, that's been a problem for me my whole life, and a lot of the times it refers back to my weight, but that's a whole nother subject. But it's something you don't know about. Like people are not being taught this, and especially for like younger people, you know, we don't know what we're doing. So then you go to the doctor, and then they're like you said, here's hormonal birth control, when there's so much possibly underneath that layer that they need to like discover yet. Yeah. So that's why I'm always like, I really hope someone, oh, there's a fly that goes right on my camera. But you know, there's so much that like we should be teaching the youth. And that's why I'm really like hoping that one day maybe we could get a bunch of people that like care about women, that were like, let's set up a really good course to like be in mainstream schools and make it mandated. Like, take that. That's one of your mandatories, just like English, math, and whatever mandatories you got. Because like our health is so important, and there's so much to it, right? Like, you're saying this layer, and I've heard other layers, and I'm like, you can't keep up with it all. You need to know these things. And, you know, if I'm just learning for the first time, and I'm turning 25 this year, like, how many other young people younger than me even should be knowing this and don't? So I'm in complete agreement. That's what I was getting at here with it.
I love it. And I agree with you so much. These are things that matter for life, and they can make such a difference in the life that we get to live.
Yeah.
And they should be taught from an early age on how to eat a proper meal, how to take care of yourself. What is your nervous system actually? And why should we prioritize that? And what is the consequence of chronic stress? Why do we not know these things?
Yeah, well, like the coffee on the empty stomach. Never heard of that before. Like, I don't drink coffee. I don't love the taste of it. But my parents, every morning, 5:30, they're up. They're drinking 3 cups of coffee before breakfast. I'm like, I don't know how you do that at all. I do not know how you do that. And like, here now you're like, oh, there's so much more to that actually. And I'm like, oh, Mom. So new brain dump of information for them. But where can people find you? Like, where on the internet? Do you help virtually, in person? Like, tell us a little bit about your services so that people can like get to know you. And we could drop those links, of course, in the description as well after this. But okay. Yeah, tell us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm mainly on Instagram right now, functional.lisa. And that's where you can find me. That's where I try to share regular posts, sometimes more than less. But I only work virtually right now. I do the functional lab tests independent of where you are located, and I do the coaching virtually as well. So yeah, you can find me there, and I would be happy to connect. Thank you so much for making this conversation possible, Elizabeth. It was such a joy.
Of course, I love it. And my last question that I always ask everyone is, if you could give one tip or piece of advice for women out there, and it could be anything, not just gut health, what would you suggest?
I would say listen to your body and establish a deeper connection with yourself, because symptoms are nothing else than signals. And whenever we ignore the signals for too long, they can turn into really persistent problems. So the sooner you start listening and connecting and prioritizing yourself, the better.
That is amazing advice. If I had availability to give you a high five, you sure would get one. But thank you so much. I love that. That was awesome. So thank you for coming on here. I feel like you've got a lot of other topics, so we definitely got to maybe try to get you back for like season 3 or something with a new one.
Oh, yeah. I would love that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on here, and hopefully we'll see everyone again another time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Bye.